My son's boss laughed when he fired him. Then I walked into the boardroom as the new owner. The doors to the executive suite opened at exactly 9:47 a.m. I remember the time because I had been watching the clock on my phone for the last 22 minutes, sitting in a chair across from the receptionist who had told me twice that Mr. Calloway was in a meeting and couldn't be disturbed. She didn't know who I was. She didn't know I had purchased the building 19 days earlier through a shell corporation registered in Delaware. She didn't know the name on the deed. No one on the 42nd floor knew. I stood up. I straightened my jacket. I walked past her desk without asking permission because asking permission was for people who didn't own the ground beneath your feet. Richard Calloway was sitting at the head of a polished mahogany table in conference room A, 12 people around him. Quarterly strategy meeting. A PowerPoint slide on the wall behind him with a graph that was trending upward. The direction men like Calloway believe their lives should always move. He didn't look up when the door opened. I said, "No interruptions, Rachel." "I'm not Rachel," I said. He looked up then. "I want you to picture this moment carefully, because moments like this don't happen often in a man's life. The moment when someone who has hurt your family in the deepest possible way, who has humiliated your child, who has laughed at your child's misfortune, who has told your child that his honesty and his diligence and his basic human decency were worth less than a quarterly earnings report. That person looks at you and realizes, in a single frozen second, that the ground they've been standing on their entire career has just been pulled out from underneath them. My name is Marcus Webb," I said. "I own this building." The room went silent. 47 days ago," I said, "you fired my son." He looked up then. "I want you to picture this moment carefully, because moments like this don't happen often in a man's life. The moment when someone who has hurt your family in the deepest possible way, who has humiliated your child, who has laughed at your child's misfortune, who has told your child that his honesty and his diligence and his basic human decency were worth less than a quarterly earnings report. That person looks at you and realizes, in a single frozen second, that the ground they've been standing on their entire career has just been pulled out from underneath them. My name is Marcus Webb," I said. "I own this building." The room went silent. 47 days ago," I said, "you fired my son." She was, so I will just say this. She was the kind of person who left a room warmer than she found it. Every single time. After she died, I buried myself in work. I bought more properties. I negotiated harder deals. I filled the silence of our house with contracts and spreadsheets and the voices of people on the other end of conference calls who didn't know me well enough to ask how I was doing. My son Andrew is our only child. He was 25 when his mother died. He handled it better than I did, which is a strange thing to say about your child, but it's true. He didn't push me to talk. He just showed up. Every Sunday. For 4 years. He'd bring Thai food from the place Eleanor loved on Water Street, and we'd sit on the back porch and watch the birds at the feeder she'd hung the spring before she got sick. "I'm fine, Dad," he'd say when I asked. "I know you are," I'd say. "Your mother made you that way." And he'd smile. Her smile, somehow on his face. Andrew graduated from Northwestern in 2019. Finance major, honors. He could have come into my company. Could have spent his career learning the family business in air-conditioned comfort. But he wanted to build something on his own. "I need to know I can do it," he told me. "You don't have to prove anything to me." "I'm not trying to prove it to you," he said. "I'm trying to prove it to myself." That was Andrew. That was always Andrew. He took a job as a junior analyst at Callaway Financial in Chicago. Starting salary, $54,000. A cubicle barely larger than a refrigerator box. A supervisor who mispronounced his name for the first 4 months. And he loved every single minute of it. "This is where I'm supposed to be, Dad," he told me on a Sunday call, about 7 months in. There was a brightness in his voice I hadn't heard since before Eleanor got sick. "I know it sounds crazy, but I wake up every morning and I actually want to go to work." "That's not crazy," I said. "That's the rarest thing in the world." For 2 years, Andrew thrived. He worked 70-hour weeks. He caught a $1.7 million accounting discrepancy that 3 senior analysts had missed. His reward was a $200 gift card to a steakhouse. I remember him telling me about it, laughing. They literally handed me a piece of plastic and said, "Great job, Andrew." I think the company spent more on the gift card processing fee than they did on the bonus. "That's corporate life," I said. "I know," he said. "I still love it." In February of this year, Andrew was promoted to senior analyst. He called me from the parking lot of his office building, his voice carrying the particular brightness of someone who has worked hard for something and actually received it. "I got it, Dad. I knew you would. You're legally obligated to say that." "I am legally obligated to say a lot of things," I told him. "This isn't one of them." 47 days ago, Andrew was called into the CEO's office. Not by his supervisor, not by his department head, by Richard Calloway himself. Andrew walked in expecting congratulations. Maybe a conversation about his future. Maybe the kind of recognition that actually means something. He walked out unemployed. The official reason was restructuring. The reality was something much uglier. Andrew had discovered a pattern of transactions in the company's quarterly filings. Money moving between Calloway Financial and a shell corporation registered in the Cayman Islands. Small amounts at first, then larger ones. He had flagged it through the proper channels. He had done exactly what a diligent employee is supposed to do. Richard Calloway fired him for it. Andrew told me everything on a Tuesday evening. He was sitting in his apartment in Lincoln Park, the one with the view of the lake that cost too much but made him happy. His voice wasn't angry. It wasn't devastated. It was hollow. The particular emptiness of someone who has done everything right and been punished for it. "He laughed, Dad," Andrew said quietly. "When security walked me out, he was standing in the hallway. And he laughed." I was quiet for a long moment. Then I said, "Andrew, I need you to send me everything you found." "Why?" "Because I'm your father, and I'm going to handle it." That night, I sat at my kitchen table, the same table where Eleanor and I had eaten dinner for 28 years, and I wrote 3 questions on a yellow legal pad. 1. Who owns the building Calloway Financial operates out of? 2. What is their financial vulnerability? 3. How much time do I have before Richard Calloway buries the evidence my son found? Then I started making phone calls. The Whitmore Building at 200 West Madison Street is a 42-story glass tower in the heart of Chicago's financial district. Calloway Financial occupied floors 38 through 42. Prime space. Corner offices with views of the lake. A lobby with marble floors and a fountain that probably cost more than most people's houses. The building was owned by a pension fund based in Columbus, Ohio. The fund managed retirement money for teachers and firefighters and state employees. People who had worked their entire lives and were counting on that money to be there when they stopped working. The pension fund, I discovered, had over-leveraged the building in 2022, a $140 million refinancing with a balloon payment due within 18 months. Their internal projections showed they couldn't make the payment. They were quietly shopping the property, quietly enough that the tenants had no idea their landlord was drowning. I made my first offer within 72 hours of Andrew's termination. The offer was $131 million. All cash. No financing contingencies. Close in 30 days. The offer came from MW Holdings LLC, a Delaware corporation with no public-facing presence, no website, no listed officers. Just a registered agent and a bank account with enough money in it to buy a skyscraper. The pension fund's board accepted in 9 days. They didn't ask questions. They didn't investigate who MW Holdings was. They just saw a cash offer 3 weeks before their fiscal quarter ended, and they grabbed it like a drowning man grabbing a rope. I closed on the building on a Thursday. I didn't tell anyone. I took an office in the building's management suite on the 3rd floor. Not the executive suite. Not anything with a view. A small room next to the HVAC control center that had previously been used for storing old maintenance logs and broken office chairs. I had it cleaned. I had it wired with 3 monitors and a private network server. I had the building's entire security system, cameras, elevator logs, access control, routed to my screens. From that room, I could see everything. Every employee who swiped their badge on floors 38 through 42. Every visitor who checked in at the lobby. Every maintenance request submitted by Calloway Financial. Every confidential document their facilities director left on his desk while he went to lunch. Every closed-door meeting in Richard Calloway's corner office. What I learned in the first 2 weeks made my stomach turn. Calloway Financial was not just engaged in questionable transactions. They were a house of cards. Their lease was up for renewal in 4 months. Their CFO had been begging the previous owners for a rent reduction, claiming financial hardship. Their headcount had dropped 15% in the last year. They had stopped paying for cleaning services on 2 of their 5 floors. The trash wasn't being emptied. The carpets weren't being vacuumed. The people working there were wading through their own decay. Richard Calloway had fired my son to protect a company that couldn't afford to vacuum its own floors. Before I tell you what happened when I walked into that boardroom, drop a 9 in the comments. I need to know you're still with me. Every single number tells me you're here, and that means more than I can say. And a quick note, some elements of what you're about to hear are fictional, crafted to entertain and to teach. If that's not what you're looking for right now, this is a good place to step away. No hard feelings. Still here? Good. I began tightening the screws. The first thing I did was commission a comprehensive structural inspection of the building. Standard procedure for a new owner. Completely legal. Completely routine. I made sure the inspectors paid special attention to floors 38 through 42. The inspection report identified critical deferred maintenance issues on Calloway's floors. Fire suppression system deficiencies. Elevator access noncompliance. The report recommended that portions of floors 38 and 39 be temporarily vacated during repairs. Estimated timeline, 6 to 8 weeks. Estimated disruption to Calloway's operations, severe. I forwarded the report to their facilities director with a cover letter that was polite, professional, and utterly devastating. Then I moved on the lease. Calloway's CFO, a man named Gerald Hutchinson, had submitted a renewal proposal 3 weeks before I bought the building. The proposal requested a 15% rent reduction and a 5-year term. I instructed the property management company to reject it. No counteroffer. No negotiation. Just a single sentence. The new ownership is evaluating all lease renewals and will respond within 90 days. 90 days would leave them 30 days from lease expiration. The panic started quietly, the way real panic always starts. Closed doors. Hushed phone calls. Gerald Hutchinson's face, which I watched on my monitors, cycling through confusion, frustration, and then something closer to terror. They had nowhere to go. You can't move a financial services firm with 180 employees in 30 days. You can't find comparable space in downtown Chicago on that kind of timeline. And you certainly can't do it when your CEO has spent the last decade burning bridges with every commercial broker in the city. I knew this because I called 3 of those brokers myself. Casually. The way industry contacts call each other when someone is thinking about making a move. Richard Calloway, one broker said, actually laughing. That man couldn't negotiate a favorable lease on a parking space. He's the most arrogant person I've ever done business with, and I've been doing this for 25 years. That was the moment I knew I had him. I made the call on a Wednesday. I identified myself as a representative of the building's new ownership and requested a meeting with Mr. Calloway to discuss the impending lease expiration. The meeting was set for Friday at 9:30 a.m. Conference room A, 42nd floor. I didn't tell them who the representative would be. Friday morning, 9:22 a.m. I stood in my small office on the 3rd floor, looking at my reflection in the darkened screen of the security monitor. Navy blue suit. White shirt. Eleanor's wedding ring on a chain around my neck, tucked beneath the shirt where no one could see it. She always said I looked better without a tie. You're not a banker, Marcus. Stop dressing like one. I had a leather folder under my arm. Inside it were 5 documents. 1. The deed to the building. 2. The structural inspection report. 3. The lease rejection letter. 4. A summary of the Cayman Island shell transactions Andrew had discovered, cross-referenced with SEC filing requirements that Richard Calloway had violated. 5. A photograph of Andrew at his Northwestern graduation. Cap and gown. The grin that was pure Eleanor. The elevator ride took 47 seconds. The doors opened directly into the executive suite. Calloway's receptionist, a young woman named Rachel who had been with the company for 2 years and had no idea what kind of man she was working for, stood up from her desk. Sir, I'm sorry, the meeting is. The meeting is with me, I said. I walked past her and into conference room A. 12 people around the table. Richard Calloway at the head. Gerald Hutchinson to his right. A PowerPoint presentation frozen on the wall behind them. Revenue projections. Market expansion. The fiction of a company that was solvent. Calloway looked up. He was 54 years old, gray at the temples, the kind of handsome that comes from expensive tailoring and a lifetime of never once being told no. He radiated the easy confidence of a man who believed he was the most powerful person in any room he entered. I think there's been a misunderstanding, he said, not standing. We're expecting the building's representative. I am the building's representative, I said. My name is Marcus Webb. I own this building. The room went still. I closed on the purchase 19 days ago. Cash offer. No financing. The pension fund that previously owned this property was motivated to sell. Calloway's expression flickered. Confusion. Then irritation. Then the first microscopic crack. I wasn't aware the ownership had changed. You weren't aware of a lot of things, I said. That's why I'm here. I set the leather folder on the table. I didn't open it. Not yet. 47 days ago, I said, you called a junior analyst into your office. His name was Andrew Webb. He had discovered a pattern of irregular transactions in your quarterly filings, money moving between this company and a shell corporation in the Cayman Islands. He reported it through the proper channels. He followed every protocol. He did exactly what a good employee is supposed to do. The CFO's face went white. The other executives exchanged glances. You fired him, I continued. You had security escort him out of the building. And then you stood in the hallway and laughed while he walked to the elevator. I paused. The silence was absolute. Andrew Webb is my son. The words hung in the air like something physical. Calloway's mouth opened. Closed. Opened again. No sound came out. This building, I said, your lease expires in 4 months. It will not be renewed. The structural inspection report you received last week was ordered by me. Repairs begin in 30 days and will require the evacuation of floors 38 and 39 for approximately 8 weeks. I opened the folder. I slid the inspection report across the table. You have approximately 60 days to find new office space. In downtown Chicago, on short notice, with a CEO who has spent the last decade alienating every commercial broker in the metropolitan area. I slid the lease rejection letter across the table. Additionally, I said, I have forwarded a complete summary of the Cayman Island shell transactions, the ones my son discovered, the ones you fired him for finding, to the Securities and Exchange Commission. I made that call yesterday morning. You should expect contact from their enforcement division within the week. Calloway stood up so fast his chair rolled backward and hit the window. His face was the color of old newspaper. This is completely, you can't. I can, I said. I did. And I'm not finished. I opened the folder one more time and slid the photograph across the table. Andrew, cap and gown. Eleanor's smile. That is my son, I said. He worked for you for 2 years. He caught a $1.7 million error that 3 senior analysts had missed. He was promoted for his diligence. He was excellent at his job. And you destroyed his career because he noticed something you wanted to keep hidden. I stood up. I closed the folder. The lease will not be renewed. The inspections will proceed. The SEC investigation will run its course. And you, Mr. Calloway, will spend the next several years answering questions from federal investigators about exactly where the money went. I walked to the door. I stopped with my hand on the handle. I didn't turn around. One more thing, I said. This building has 47 security cameras on floors 38 through 42. I've been watching them for 3 weeks. Every closed-door meeting, every panicked phone call, every moment of you realizing you might actually have to face consequences for the first time in your career. I opened the door. Enjoy your next 60 days, Mr. Calloway. The SEC investigation took 11 months. Richard Calloway was charged with securities fraud, wire fraud, and conspiracy to commit money laundering. The shell transactions Andrew had uncovered were part of a scheme that had defrauded investors of approximately $28 million over a 5-year period. Calloway pleaded guilty in exchange for a reduced sentence. He received 6 years in federal prison. Gerald Hutchinson, the CFO, accepted a cooperation agreement and received 14 months. 3 other executives were indicted. 2 more resigned before they could be charged. Calloway Financial declared bankruptcy within 120 days. The company that had occupied 5 floors of a downtown Chicago skyscraper, that had employed 180 people, that had felt powerful enough to destroy a junior analyst's career for the crime of being observant, that company simply ceased to exist. I filled the vacant floors within 3 months. New tenants, good companies, ones that paid fair market rates and treated their employees well and didn't launder money through offshore shell corporations. The building is fully occupied now. The fountain in the lobby still runs. The marble floors still shine. And somewhere on the 42nd floor, in what used to be Richard Calloway's corner office, a different CEO is sitting at a different desk, making different decisions. That's how it should be. Andrew watched the entire thing unfold from his apartment in Lincoln Park. I didn't tell him about the building until the day after the boardroom meeting. I drove down to Chicago and sat across from him at his kitchen table, the same table where he'd told me about his firing 48 days earlier, and I laid out everything I had done. He was quiet for a very long time. Then he looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "Dad," he said slowly, "you bought an entire skyscraper to get revenge on my boss." "No," I said. "I bought a skyscraper to make sure no one ever does to you what Richard Calloway did. There's a difference." He was quiet for another moment. Then he laughed. Not the polite laugh of someone acknowledging a joke. The real laugh. The one that comes from somewhere deep. The one that sounds exactly like Eleanor. "You are absolutely insane," he said. "I prefer thorough," I said. He shook his head. He was still laughing. And then, just as suddenly, he wasn't. His eyes were wet. "Thank you, Dad," he said quietly. "For everything." "You don't have to thank me," I said. "I'm your father. It's my job." Andrew started his own financial consulting firm about 7 months ago. He works with small businesses, the kind of companies the big firms won't touch because the fees aren't high enough. Restaurants, family-owned construction companies, a bookstore that's been in the same family for 3 generations. He helps them with their books. He makes sure they're protected. He charges less than he should and works more than he admits. He is, in other words, exactly the man his mother would have wanted him to become. He works out of a small office on Michigan Avenue, not in my building. He insisted on that. "I love you, Dad, but I need to do this on my own." I understood. I respected it. That's what you do when your children grow up and become people you admire. You let them. We have dinner every other Sunday, sometimes at his place, sometimes at mine. He'll tell me about his clients, and I'll tell him about the building, and we'll sit on the back porch and watch the birds at the feeder Eleanor hung the spring before she got sick. The feeder is still there. I still fill it. I don't know if that's sentiment or habit or something closer to hope, but I do it every week. Here is what I know after 63 years on this earth. Being a father does not end when your children grow up. It just changes shape. You stop holding their hand crossing the street and start holding the line when the world tries to take something from them that they earned. You stop teaching them how to tie their shoes and start teaching them, by example, that some things are worth fighting for, even when the fight takes longer than you thought it would, even when it costs more than you expected to pay. My son did everything right. He found a problem. He reported it. He followed every rule. And the system that was supposed to protect people like him failed completely. So I built a different system. I am not proud of everything I did. I used money and influence and 31 years of real estate knowledge to destroy a man's livelihood. That is not a small thing, and I do not pretend it is. But I would do it again. Every single part of it. Because Andrew deserved better than what Richard Calloway gave him. And sometimes justice is not delivered by the institutions that are supposed to deliver it. Sometimes justice is just a father with the resources to make things right and the will to see it through. This has been a dad's revenge story. If it moved you, if it made you think, I would love to know what you took from it. Leave a comment below. Tell me what city, what state, what country you're watching from. Every reply reminds me why these stories matter. And if you haven't subscribed yet, I would be honored to have you. More stories are coming. More moments of fathers and families, and the quiet kind of courage that doesn't make the news, but changes everything. A final note before we go. Some elements of this story are fictional, crafted to entertain and to teach. But every lesson woven into it was written with you in mind. The best revenge story isn't about getting even. It's about getting back to what matters. I'll see you in the next one.